2.5 is about simplifying expressions and using order of operations. They went ahead and did 1 through 4 again. These are the exact same things. Remember PEMDAS? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. All those rules still apply. It's just that we're throwing in the new rules of when you add 2 negatives and so forth. And so you have to keep that in mind. So objective A is going to be simplifying some expressions, and then we'll get to objective B when we flip the page. All right? What's an exponent mean? Times itself that many times, okay? So when you have negative 2 to the 4th, it's negative 2 times itself 4 times. So don't do 2 times 4, because if I wanted 2 times 4, I wouldn't make that 4 tiny, right? Whenever you have something like this, I just start pairing them up, because what do we know about a negative times a negative? It's going to be positive. Yep. Negative times a negative is positive. So we know that negative 2 times negative 2 will end up being a positive, what? Say it louder. 4. And then these 2 negative 2's times each other will give you a positive 4. So you just end up with 4 times 4, or a positive 16. Okay? What's different about number 2 is that the negative is not inside the parentheses. So it's not negative 2 that we're raising to the 4th power. It's just 2 that we're raising to the 4th power, and that negative just kind of hangs out. Okay? So this is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Okay? The negative's just going to hang out. But don't we already know what 2 times 2 is and 2 times 2 is? We sure do. And don't we already know what 4 times 4 is? 16. So your answer is going to be negative 16. So it's the same number. 2 times itself 4 times is 16. In this case, we just have that negative hanging out, so saying make your answer negative.
So what about the brackets is just a negative?
I just put the brackets just to show you that the negative has nothing to do with the 4th power. And then inside the parentheses, that's the 2 to the 4th power. You don't really need them. I just do it to show you that this negative's hanging out, and then all this stuff over here is the 2 to the 4th. I'm just kind of showing you the division. Okay? If you didn't have them, though, Micah, you wouldn't be wrong. All right.
Is it like that every time?
Yeah, so if the negative's not part of the parentheses, it hangs out.
Okay.
But if it's part of the parentheses, that's the number that you're multiplying. On number 3, guys, this is something that we could have seen on chapter 1. This is just 3 times 6 times 6. Is that okay? And at that point, you can group them however you want. You can do 6 times 6 first, times 3, or you can do 3 times 6 times 6. It doesn't matter. Some of you like to be strategic and just go left to right. So 3 times 6 is 18. I don't know what 18 times 6 is, so I'm going to throw it over here and just do my math. 6 times 8 is 48. And then 6 times 1 is 6. Is that 10? So 108? Does that look right? Nothing new there because we didn't have any negatives or anything. It's just to remind yourself that that 2 is only with the 6. So only the 6 was squared. If you're a rebel, maybe you did 6 times 6 first, which was 36. But guess what 36 times 3 is? 108. It doesn't matter which way you do it. Are there any questions on 1 through 3?
Why? I don't really understand the
Difference between 1 and 2?
I guess just the negative in the parentheses part and the 4 being outside the parentheses.
Right. So this little 4 means you're going to take whatever's to the left of me and multiply it by itself 4 times.
Yeah.
What's to the left of it? The parentheses, which says all of this number is negative 2. So you're going to take negative 2 4 times and multiply it by itself. Mm-hmm. Right here, what's directly to the left is just the 2. This is not a negative 2. This is the negative 2 to the 4th. So all we want to do is take 2 4 times, and the answer is just the opposite. It's just negative. So whenever you have it in the parentheses, this states that this is a negative number. This is negative 2 to the 4th power. Remember when we have like plus, minus, we put the negatives around it. It's just something that you got to get comfortable with. It really,
That makes sense.
It's just when the negative's in there, it means all of it is going to be to the 4th power.
Sure.
When it's not, it's just that 2. Guys, on numbers 4 and 5, the division bar is just kind of like parentheses, meaning let's clean up the top, let's clean up the bottom, and then let's worry about it. So notice here, the top is cleaned up. The top is just a number, negative 25. So that's going to stay negative 25. Down here, though, what operation is that when they're shoved right next to each other like that? Multiplication. What's a positive times a negative?
Negative.
A negative, and what's 5 times 1? 5. So this is just -5. Is that okay so far? Once you single it to a single number on top and a single number on the bottom, just do the division. What's a negative times a negative divided by a negative? Positive, and what's a 25 divided by 5? 5. Remember that little triangle we did? Plus, minus, minus. A negative divided by a negative is a plus. A negative divided by a positive is a negative, if you need to remember that.
I thought because the 5 would have been bigger that it would have gone with the
You're thinking of addition,
Okay.
okay? So whenever it's multiplication, and that's what gets hard, is that you have all these rules. Multiplication and division is just straight up to the same sign will be positive, opposite signs will always be negative, okay? So these have opposite signs, so it's always negative. On number 5, it's really similar, guys, but we just have to clean up the top and clean up the bottom. So on the top, this was Tuesday's lesson. This was last week's lesson. What do you do when you add opposite signs? You're not really adding, you're actually subtracting. So what's 18 minus 6? 12. But what's the sign of 12 going to be based on negative 18 and 6? Negative why? The 18 is negative. So this is negative 12. On the bottom, this is Thursday's lesson. We can change this to an addition problem. -3 plus a -1. Remember when we change it to an addition problem, the front number stays the same, so -3 stays a -3. The subtraction problem changes to addition, and then what's the opposite of +1? -1. And the reason why we do this is because on Tuesday, we learned that when you add to the same sign, you actually add. So what's 3 plus 1? 4, but what's the sign that they both share? Negative. So -3 minus 1 is actually a -4. Okay, and that's where I think we're going to have the most difficulty in the section, is that you guys know PIMDAS, you know order of operations. It's remembering all the rules of addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. All right, last thing, a negative divided by a negative. Positive, 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay, so it's exactly like 1.8, it's just that we have negatives involved with it. Are there any questions on the front page? Are we ready? Okay, so they're just going to get more involved. On this one, guys, we have 30 plus 50 plus -4 to the third power. So which thing are we going to take care of first? This third power, right? So I'm going to go over here, -4 times -4 times -4. Jacob, I'm going to put you on the spot. Why is it -4 3 times?
Because it's actually saying there's 3 of the -4s.
Because the negative's in the parentheses, so that's the number I'm cubing, and the cube means I need it 3 times. Whenever you have an odd exponent and the number's negative, your answer will be negative, and you'll see why. Because what's a negative times a negative? Positive, so what's 4 times 4? So that's 16, but what do we still multiply by? A -4. So what happens there when you take a positive times a negative, you go back to being negative. I don't know what 16 times 4 is, so guess what I'm doing over here off to the side? 16 times 4, okay? So 4 times 6 is 24. I put my 4, carry my 2. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. So what's my answer for that part? -64. Is that okay? Have I done anything with the 30 and the 50 yet? No. So all I've done is step number 1, my cube, okay? So this is 30 plus 50 plus a -64. Guys, at that point, all we have is addition. So we're just going to move left to right. What's 30 plus 50? 80. That's just normal addition, right? If you need to line it up vertically, you can off to the side. But 30 plus 50 is 80. And then again, I think this is the hard part. I think this is what's going to trip us up. Whenever you add opposite signs, what do?
Subtract.
You subtract. So we're going to do 80 minus 64 off to the side here. So adding opposite sides, you're finding how far apart they are from each other. So we're going to subtract. I'm going to borrow from the 8, so he's going to be a 7. He's going to be a 10. 10 take away 4 is 6. 7 take away 6 is 1. So I have a 16, but I have to think of my sign. Is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative? positive because my 80 is positive, right? So notice we had two things going on. We had the cube we had to take care of first to get negative 64, and then we had addition straight left to right. 30 plus 50 was 80, but at this point when you add a positive with a negative, you're really subtracting. So the difference between the two was 16, but the 80 was positive, so he holds strong and he keeps your answer positive. Number 7 is just a bunch of exponents, okay? So in number 7, I want you to realize that on the first chunk, negative 2 cubed, it's just the 2 cubed, and the negative is going to hang out. On the second chunk, it's negative 4 squared, but it's all of negative 4 squared, so it's going to be negative times a negative 4, okay? So this is, and again, I don't have to put parentheses, but it's kind of like that. It says take care of your 2 cubed first, and then just make your answer negative. And then what is this? Negative 4 times negative 4 minus 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. So I just kind of expanded it. Do you have to do that? No. If you can look at them and know what the answers are going to be, that's fine. But all I did was just expand it. So the negative 2 cubed just means take your 2, cube it, make the answer negative. The negative 4 squared takes both negative 4s and multiply it by it. The minus 1 to the 5th says take whatever 1 to the 5th is and subtract it. So let's start over here. What's 2 times 2? 4. But what do we still have? A 2, right? And so this ends up being negative 8. Is everybody okay with that? So you just go 2 times 2 is 4, times another 2 is an 8. So 2 cubed is 8, but who's following us all along? The negative. Then I'm going to go to the next chunk. What's a negative times a negative? A positive 16. So that's just going to be plus 16 there. Is that okay how I'm doing it? You see what I'm doing? All right. And then the minus is going to stay a minus. But 1 to any power is just 1, which is great, okay? So that's just minus 1. Is that okay so far, guys? All right. Now we have addition and subtraction, so they're tied, so I'm just going to move left to right. So remember, whenever you add opposite signs, what are you really doing? Subtracting. So what's the difference between 16 and 8? 8. Is it going to be a positive 8 or a negative 8? He's positive, okay? So this is 8 minus 1. But what's 8 minus 1? 7. That's one where you don't need to rewrite it, right? You could write it as 8 plus a negative 1 if you wanted, but anytime you have a big number minus a small number, you know how to do that subtraction. That answer is just 7, okay? So I did 2 cubed to get 8. The negative follows along. Negative 4 times negative 4 gave me that positive 16, and 1 to the 5th is just 1, so I'm subtracting 1. The first move I made was the negative 8 plus the positive 16. When you add opposite signs, you really are subtracting, so 16 minus 8 was 8, but it was positive because the bigger number was positive, and then minus 1 was our last step to give us that 7. All right, example 8, we're just chugging along, guys. PEMDAS, P, parentheses, the first thing we're going to take care of, so we're going to take care of that 2 minus 9 first. So this 2 hangs out, and then in here, I'm going to write it as an addition problem. So the 2 stays the same, the minus changes to a plus, and the 9 changes to negative 9. Okay? So all I did was say, hey, it's subtraction with integers. I know how to do that if I make it an addition problem. The front number stays the same, so 2 stays the same. The subtraction changes to addition, and what's the opposite of 9? Negative 9. Then I'm just going to have plus negative 12 minus 3 tagging along. Okay? I know it looks like them.
Can you slow down a little?
Sure can. So the only thing I've done so far, Micah, is I've just changed this subtraction problem to the addition problem that we learned on Thursday, okay? Everything else is where it is. And this is, again, it's where you came in late and you missed the first part of it. But whenever you change a subtraction problem to addition problem, the front number stays the same, subtraction changes to addition, and the 9 changes to the opposite, a negative 9. So if that was 2 minus a negative 9, the opposite of a negative 9 would be a positive 9. And the reason why we do that is because we learned on Tuesday how to add integers, okay? So the only thing I'm going to do right now, guys, this 2 is going to stay the same, and all this crap in the back is going to stay the same. I'm just going to focus on what 2 plus negative 9 is, okay? Whenever you add opposite signs, you don't really add. You do what? You subtract, and you give it the sign of the bigger number. So what's the difference between 9 and 2? 7, but which one's the bigger number? The 9, and what's his sign? Negative. So this is actually -7. And that's why Thursday they had us teach it this way, because it's the same rules from Tuesday, okay? Guess who's still tagging along? Plus -12, -3. I haven't done anything with them. So I rewrote my subtraction as an addition problem, and I did that addition problem. Now I have multiplication, addition, subtraction. What am I going to do next? Multiplication. What's 2 times 7? -14. Why do you know it was negative? You're right. Negative times a positive. So this is -14 plus a -12 minus a 3. So at that point, guys, we kind of cleared up our parentheses, but we're just doing order of operations. Multiplication comes before addition and subtraction. Now we have addition and subtraction, so we're just going to move left to right. What's the rule when you add the same signs? You actually add. So what's 14 plus 12? 26, but they're both negative. So you're in debt. Think you're in debt. What's $14 in debt and another $12 in debt? You're $26 in debt, okay? So this is -26 minus 3. And again, you might not need to rewrite these as addition problems. So say you can look at that, you know, okay, I'm $26 in the hole, and I go spend $3 more. Where am I going? More in the hole. So if you don't need to rewrite them, don't rewrite them, okay? But the book teaches it as an addition problem. So this is -26 plus, right? The subtraction changes to a plus. What's the opposite of 3? -3. And the whole idea, yes, ma'am?
Why wouldn't we have done that with the 8 minus 1?
You can, but you know what 8 minus 1 is.
Right, I'm saying, why wouldn't that have been changed to 8 plus -1?
You can, but you already know what 8 minus 1 is. So the whole idea here is, do you know what -26 minus 3 is off the top of your head? You do? Okay. So you don't have to do this at all. But you can do it, Tiffany, if you want.
Okay, that's what I was saying.
What do you do when you have opposite signs? You subtract.
Okay, I
What's
see what you're saying.
But like, you know, a big number take away a small number. 8 minus 1, it could have been in chapter 1. That's all I'm saying. So like, if you know the actual math, 8 minus 1, but you can do it that way, you'll still get 7. So you can do it that way, absolutely. All right, here we have 2 of the same sign. So when we have the same sign, we actually add. So we'll get 29, but since they're both negative, it's -29. Are you guys getting a little bit more familiar with the adding?
No.
Okay. So you need to, have you watched the video from Tuesday's lesson yet that I put on my math lab? If you haven't, you'll want to do it before the test on Tuesday, okay? So you can print off the notes from there and you can watch the video as if you're in class.
We got homework, right?
Yes. Every week you have homework due.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. It's math. If you have a basketball game, don't you practice?
Yeah.
Yep. Unless you're naturally a superstar at math, you're going to have homework to practice. What'd you say? It's a lot. Yeah, we all have family, work, sports, naps. Yeah. You know, our priorities. So looking at this next one, guys, absolute value is actually a grouping symbol, okay? So it's like parentheses, so we actually have to do the absolute value first. So that's going to be step number 1. I'm changing nothing else. I'm just going to say what the absolute value of -8 is. So -5 is going to stay -5. I'm still going to multiply, but what's the absolute value of -8? 8, right? Absolute value is just how far are you from 0, so it's always positive. So that's just an 8 that pops out, plus a -3 plus 2 cubed. All right, I have multiplication, addition, and an exponent. I'm going to do exponent. And what I want to note, guys, is if you're really good about writing your steps down while you work on my math lab or whatever you did, notice up here, we already did 2 cubed. What was 2 cubed? 8, right? So don't we already know what 2 cubed is? It's 8. And so if you want to redo it, you can, but if you've already done it somewhere on your paper, why reinvent the wheel, right? We've already have it. It's a great thing. Let's use it. So we already did this in example 7, right? So we'll have negative 5 times 8 plus negative 3 plus 8. Yes, sir?
Why don't we just do the math like?
You can do the math. Yeah.
Like we just, like instead of putting all that, you could just put like.
Oh, yeah. Because some people, so you already know, like, you can do the multiplication and stuff like that. Is that what you're saying? Like,
I'm saying like why write, like keep writing them, like basically the whole answer.
the thing, because with order of operations, which one you do first is important. So if you don't realize that you need to do this first, you might add negative 3 with 8 first. And so it's one of those things, though, if you feel comfortable, Adrian, and you know when you're going to do this, that you're going to do this first, this last, you can do it all. I can do it all in one step. But this is a pre-algebra course where we're learning the step-by-step stuff. So you don't have to rewrite it if you don't, but I think if you do, you make sure you catch every little step. So it's up to you. I don't force you.
No, I just ain't trying
Yeah.
to get you, like.
Yeah. So I can look at that and say, okay, negative 5 times 8 is negative 40. I'm going to add a negative 3, that's negative 43, plus 8, that's negative 35. Like, I can do it like that. But, or whatever it is, but we're not all capable of doing that, so. That's why I do. I mean, I'd rather be careful, cover all my steps, than try to jump over steps. All right, at this point, guys, we took care of our exponent, so we're going to do the operation here, multiplication first. What do you get when you take a negative times a positive? A negative, right? So what's a 5 times an 8? Negative 40, plus a negative 3, plus an 8. What is negative 43? Oh, excuse me, I just told you the answer. What's negative 4 plus 3? Oh my gosh. Okay. And again, I like this. When they have the same sign, guys, you just do the math. So what's 40 plus 3? 43, but they're both negative, so it just shows you how much you're in the hole. So this is negative 43 plus 8. This is the difficult math. You want to add, but since they're opposite sides, you don't actually add. You will do what? Subtract, and then you give it the sign of the bigger number. So we'll do 43 minus 8 over here, where we'll have to borrow. So we have 13 minus 8, what's that, 5 and 3. So our answer, guys, is going to be what? Negative 35. Why? Because the difference between 43 and 8 is 35, but the negative is the bigger number. He's pulling us down into that hole. The $8 barely moves us at all. That's the whole idea. You're in the hole $43 and someone gives you $8. You're moving up in the right direction. It's just nowhere close to getting you out of the hole. Okay? I really think section 2.3 and 2.2 and 2.3 are going to be your hardest parts, okay? Look at this one last chunk here, guys. We have parentheses inside parentheses. So kind of like what Adrian said, I am going to write most of it again, except for this next line. I'm going to do the first chunk of math that I can do, all right? So negative 4 bracket, negative 6 plus 5, but 5 is just waiting for an answer to pop out of there. Negative 3 plus 5. Negative 3 plus 5.
2.
It's 2. Why do you know it's 2?
Because you subtract.
You subtract them, and then why do you know it was positive 2?
Take the sign of the
Bigger number, which was 5. Perfect. So a 2 pops out, but guess what we still have? Minus 7 tagging along. All right. We got rid of one set of parentheses, but we still have a set of parentheses, brackets, squiggly brackets. They're all different ways of showing parentheses. So inside here, what am I going to do first? Am I going to add or am I going to multiply? Multiply, right? Addition and subtraction are always your last things. So you have negative 4 bracket, negative 6, and then what's 5 times 2? Easy enough. There's no signs there or anything. What'd you say? 10. Are you okay, Devin? Are you asking a question? Okay. Where the 2 came from? Okay. He's the first set of parentheses right there. So we did like those Russian nesting dolls, you know, we did the inside first, so negative 3 plus 5 gave us a positive 2, but then 2 times 5 was 10. All right, one set of parentheses still remains. I still need to do this. Who hangs out? The negative 4. But I can do this math. Whenever you add opposite signs, you really subtract. So it's 10 minus 6, 4, and since the 10 is the big one, it's going to be positive 4 minus 7. Guys, I'm going to say that over and over again. That was Tuesday's lesson. Opposite signs, you're really subtracting and give it the sign of the bigger number. So now we have multiplication and then subtraction. That minus 7 is going to be the last thing we worry about. What do you get when you take a negative times a positive? A negative? What's 4 times 4? 16 minus 7.
So that bracket means multiply.
That, it's just like your parentheses, right? So brackets, squiggly brackets, are all versions of parentheses. So this negative 4 out here in the very beginning, we're saying, whatever this crap is in here, multiply me by it, okay? So we were able to get it down all the way to 4. That's what that stuff ended up being. All right, last thing, again, some of you might be able to look at that and say negative 16, take away negative 7, or take away 7 is blah, blah, blah. But Thursday's lesson said, take your first number, negative 16, take your subtraction, write it as a plus, take your second number, and write it as the opposite. So now you realize that when you have the same sign, what can you do? Add it, okay? So take your subtraction, change it to a plus, take your back number, change it to its opposite.
23.
So yeah, I was gonna say, and if you have to do it over here, what was that 23? Is that what you guys get? So it'll be negative 23